And I think when it comes to partnership, when it comes to partnership with government, there's a fundamental issue which we still need to address in this country. Since 1994, we had the TRC, with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. There's never, and I've been involved in corporates, I guess for all my working life, there's never been a really sincere discussion and debate and engagement between the government and the private sector to answer the question of how trust can be built between the corporate sector and government. And I can tell you, I blame not only the government in this case. I think the corporate environment, and it's all about leadership, has a lot to do in addressing the lack of trust that still exists between government and the private sector. We always think, if you just, for instance, look back at 2010, where we hosted the World Cup, that by working on certain projects, we can deal with the issue of lack of trust between government and the private sector. And my view is that it cannot happen spontaneously. There needs to be a proper discussion, a proper engagement between the private sector and government, because if we are really interested in addressing the ills of our society, if we are really concerned about the lack of growth or the, I would say the weak growth in our economy that we're experiencing, we've got to work together with the government. We've got to work together as a private sector. And having a situation where we sit at dinner tables and we criticize what government is doing, and we go to government and hear government people who simply adopt an attitude that they're going to continue doing whatever they do despite the private sector, I don't think it's going to take us anywhere. And I can make a number of examples. If government spends, for instance, 9 billion rand in the jobs fund, you can imagine how far that 9 billion rand could have gone in addressing the issues of unemployment if we had sat around the table with government and came up with ideas of how we can leverage that 9 billion rand, which could easily have been transformed into 90 billion rand if you brought the private sector, which is able to raise the kind of funding that is required to deal with the ills of unemployment that we face in the country. But because we work in our own little corners, government continues, they do what they do, which is all in the interest of the country. And we as a private sector continue to play our role in CSI, but at the end of the day, we're not getting the kind of impact that we could be generating for the benefit of our society. So it can't just happen spontaneously, and I'm not sure what needs to be done, but it is, as far as I'm concerned, quite an urgent issue, because we will never really truly address the problems in education, we'll never address the problems in health, we'll never address the problems of unemployment effectively as we could, to the extent that we continue to work parallel to each other. Now, when it comes to partnerships with employees, clearly we must understand, I think, as companies, that people that work for us are inherently good. People are inherently good. They want to get involved in something more than just earning a paycheck at the end of the month. And therefore, volunteerism is a very important concept, is a very important issue that, in fact, leads to better employee satisfaction, because people that work for us as companies come from communities, come from society, and if they are more engaged, not just in their day-to-day, their 8-to-5 job, but they're involved in something that is bigger than just earning a paycheck at the end of the month, you are more likely as a company to have better performance across the board. And therefore, I think it is absolutely important for companies to drive volunteers initiatives that engage employees. In fact, they can be used, volunteer initiatives and involvement in corporate social initiatives can improve your development of leaders within the companies. Because suddenly you may have someone, like in a bank, who's a corporate financier. They're very good technically. They're very good in working with other people who are bankers like themselves. But wait until you expose that person to working with a school, with a community, where suddenly they have to argue and debate issues with other leaders who think in a way that is completely different to how they think, that can only develop them as people. And we have found at First Rand that by involving people in volunteerism, it actually improves their ability to become leaders